So hello and welcome to my Warrior Axes Are Good video, #2, because ArenaNet released my playground. This cave, this console, probably one of my favourite things in this game, and it's going to allow me to be a lot more thorough in my tests from now on. So thank you ArenaNet for that. Thank you so much. So, what are we doing here? We're doing a number of tests. Each test is going to be on a standard kitty golem. It's going to have 25 stacks of vulnerability. We're going to have 25 stacks of might. We're going to have permanent fury, and we're going to have the banner effects applied to ourselves. The first test we're going to do is I'll do it a few times just to sort of get an idea of what sort of numbers we get. We're going to be running a Phalanx build. So runes of strength, and it's all ascended, and we're going greatsword, force and air, and our traits. Everyone who plays Phalanx should be familiar with this. Strength traits, tactics, berserker. We've got Phalanx strength, forceful greatsword, sword. Everything. This is your standard Phalanx build. All right, let's see what we can get. So, what are we changing now? Well, first of all, we're changing all our gear for Rune of the Scholar, not Rune of Strength. And we're also going to be changing out tactics for arms. And this is the commonly accepted replacement for Phalanx Strength when you have enough might for your party, you know. So this might generation has got nothing to do with this Phalanx warrior because this is not a Phalanx warrior. It's just a warrior spec'd out for damage.
My energy is diminished.
Alright, so what are we changing now? Well, we're going to be changing Headbutt to Signet of Rage. The reason we're doing this is because the Axe Warrior does not need to generate adrenaline the same way as the Phalanx Warrior or the Greatsword Warrior does. So we're just going to get a little bit of a bonus from that. And we're going to change our traits very slightly as well. We're going to put Axe Mastery on. And we're going to change Burst Precision to Dual Wielding to increase the damage. Then we're going to put a percentage of power is given to Vitality, and then we're going to change our food. So currently I have on Boon Duration and Nourishment Power. We're going to change our food to the Bowl of Seaweed Salad for extra damage while moving. And we're going to put Furious Maintenance Oil on as well. So that changes 10% of your Vitality into Frosty. And then we're just going to see what kind of DPS we can get. Right. So my first round of testing wasn't particularly helpful. I mean, there was quite a lot of variance in the results I was getting. And I expect that because we have a crit chance, which can, a little bit of bad luck can mean we get higher numbers in some places and lower numbers in other places. The highest I got, as you see around here, is like 14.2. that was an axis thing, but I never got anywhere near that again. So I think I must literally crit on every shot. I was averaging something like something around this sort of number, from 13.1 to sort of 13.5 on axis, and the greatsword was varying from, I'd say, from a little bit lower than that to a little bit higher than that. So it had a little bit of a bigger range. Maybe from 12, like on average 12.8 to about 13.8, that sort of range. So in order to make a sort of a crisper view, I'm going to up the ante a bit. I'm going to put some more real world situations into our little playground here. First thing I would note there is the reason we did the test was to sort of put a bit of a real world spin on it. Right, we've got mobs walking around. That happens a lot in Guild Wars. DPS cannot be perfect. Like I managed to get on average much higher than I was getting here. I mean, 10.7 is a lot lower than the average I was getting on the stationary. And you'd expect that. Obviously, it's a moving target. It's a lot harder to hit. But the point of doing this test was that it's a lot harder to hit with the greatswords. The difference should be pretty minimal with the axes. Let's find out. We're starting a test now. We've changed our food round to damage while moving and the frosty vitality food, and we've changed great fortitude in, axe mastery, and dual wielding in. So let's give it a bash. So, what are our conclusions? Here's one of my axe tests here versus an end result of one of my greatsword tests. We're getting higher DPS. And yes, I'm far from perfect on the greatsword, but it's basically impossible to mess up the rotations for the axe. I would at this point also like to mention that the rotations for the greatsword I basically copied from Meta Battle, and most people should be aware. Like, the people that work these things out are mathematicians with spreadsheets. The proper pros at this game. They work out what order to use what skills, and how to keep your damage up at all times. So I tried to emulate as best I could on a moving target, which admittedly could be better. But with regards to the axe, I essentially had to guess. Nobody's done the maths for the axe because nobody rates it. Potentially in a spreadsheet, it does worse. But we don't live in a spreadsheet. That's a different argument entirely. But the moving target was something that I wanted to do very deliberately to explain how easy it is to get a basic axe combination down. So I had to do trial and error for axe skills to find out what I reckoned was the best. One thing I pretty much immediately got rid of was the idea of running Berserker's Power on axes and spamming an F1 skill. I just As many tests as I did, it just didn't work out very well on DPS. The only way I could see to increase DPS on an axe was to use skill 2 and skill 4 as close to cooldown as possible without interrupting an auto attack chain. That was the best I could come up with. I would also mention that on an axe build, because you don't really rely on generating adrenaline, you can also run Signated Rage for another free 100 precision, which really does help with your crit chance on an axe build. You know, gets it up to a very nice level where you're going to be reliably hitting crits. On Greatsword, most people take Headbutt to keep up the adrenaline, to keep up Berserker's power. It's much more useful for that. Obviously, this is a trade-off as well, because in a lot of fights, CC is an issue. So, not having Headbutt, you might think, well, you're actually doing your party a disservice to not be able to break bars. So that's up to you as well. Like, I'm not going to do the test for that because I've done a lot of tests on these numbers, but yeah, and there's a side bonus, of course, which I haven't even got into of running these axes build, and that is your health pool. You gain health from this, you gain health from the food, the vitality food. I did a lot of testing to see what I reckoned was the best food to use with this build, and this seemed like I was getting the most damage. I did a ton of different tests to try and get the most. So these, I think it's a bountiful sharpening, bountiful maintenance oil. That's what it is, and that worked out really well. So that's the food I would recommend for an axe build. So, what is my actual conclusion of the video? Well, if you hadn't guessed from the name of the video, it's that axes are good. I encourage everyone to do these tests themselves, particularly on a moving target. See how good a rotation you can get on Greatsword. You can probably get a lot better than I did, but in a real world situation, maybe that's, you know, like even a target walking in a circle, you know, doesn't take away from dodging attacks and things like that. It's almost impossible to get the rotation that I came up with for the axes wrong. You can keep moving to keep this bonus up. It's just that simple. Axes are good. So yeah, that's it. Thanks for watching. Tell a friend.